Hi guys, thanks so much for watching Speaking of Founders Mission. I'm Stephanie and I'm here with Neal Khosla, the CEO and founder of Curai. Thank you so much for being here today, Neal.
Thanks for having me, Stephanie. I'm really excited to be on.
I'm excited to hear more about Curai because you guys are trying to bring care to the entire world, really, starting with California, but through AI and machine learning.
Our mission and the reason we started this company was this idea of how do you build a world where 8 billion people have access to really great primary health care. And when we looked at the space and what we saw was that there's just a massive gap in demand between the supply of high quality healthcare we have and what people want. Even here in the US, you can measure that about 25 times the number of people who are getting in to see a primary care physician are going online to Google and asking questions related to their health. And then when you think globally, like we said, maybe there's a few 100 million people who have access to really great healthcare, and 8 billion people need it. And so when we looked at that problem, we said the only way we're going to solve this is to figure out how to dramatically amplify the supply of physicians that we have today. And that's where we talk about AI and machine learning, as we call it, the great equalizer. So it's a way to, increase the supply of doctors that we have and also improve the quality while reducing the cost of delivering care. And that's a huge thing when you think about, building a version of the healthcare system where people have as much access as they do to Google. Well, in order to build that, you can't have a doctor's visit cost $125 or $150, and you can't even have it cost the $40 or $50 that a telemedicine visit costs today here in the US. It's got to be closer to a 40 or 50-cent visit. And that's the question we've been asking is, what does it look like to build a version of the future where a doctor's visit could cost 40 or 50 cents?
It's really amazing because you guys do this through a subscription-based service, but it's incredibly affordable. It, like you said, you're looking to get to 40 or 50-cent visits. So your subscription service just costs under $100, significantly at this point, and just makes it accessible for everybody. And also they can go on, get virtual care from US-based doctors and coaches who are available 24/7.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So, I'll be totally upfront and say we're not at that 40 or 50-cent visit today, but we have made material progress. We're closer to about $10 for a visit in terms of what it costs us to deliver. And, we've tried to move away from this visit-based pricing scheme because we want to encourage our patients to engage with their care team, which for us consists of not only US-based physicians, but also what we call health coaches and the AI and the software we've built. And we want our patients to be engaging with that longitudinally because health is really not something that you just respond to when things go bad. And as we know in this country, when you only respond when things go bad, people get progressively sicker. And so we want people to be able to engage and get health education and information and get their questions about nutrition and lifestyle answered, but also have access to a clinical team that can really provide care, update their prescriptions if they're dealing with different issues, help them figure out what the right options are for them downstream, help them get testing if they need lab tests or what have you. And so we really see it as the evolution of primary care to include, a more longitudinal model and the evolution of telehealth where, as opposed to a 7 to 15 minute, one-off episode, I should call like a one-off encounter where you're just talking to some doctor and they're trying to address your issue. We view it as a more progressive ongoing thing. And so in that sense, a lot of our visits, don't fit into this normal scope of I came, I talked to a doctor for 7 minutes and then I left and I never saw them again. It's an ongoing dialogue with your care team. Patients come back and ask questions and say, hey, you said take 2 of these pills once daily, but should I take it with food? Or do I need to take it a certain time of day? All the types of questions and things that leave patients behind and actually lead to worse outcomes and results in the sense that, oftentimes when patients don't get answers to their questions about medication, they stop adhering to those medications because they're just paralyzed about what to do. So that's the type of vision we have for our product.
You said a couple of things there that made me think of a few other topics all combined into one. So one, your doctors do have the ability to prescribe medications, and they can also order lab tests. Now, those things would be an additional cost outside of your service, but the actual visit with the physician is all included in your subscription, which is incredible. And then you talked about the continuity and being able to build a relationship with these people over time. And that's a difference between the traditional telemedicine or virtual care that you're getting even through your insurance company, when you have, you might work with one particular hospital system and your doctor's in there and you have the ability to message them about your care. But you usually get a question. It's, is this a non-urgent medical question? It's going to be 48 hours until you get your response. Whereas you said that the typical visit on your platform is about 30 minutes and people get to talk to a doctor in that time. So they can get that immediate answer to those questions, which really it removes yet another barrier.
So we are in the process of bifurcating our service at some level, where you will have a pool of what we think of as urgent doctors for really urgent issues. And then you'll have recurring communication with an individual doctor. But the beauty of it is that you're still going to have continuity of care, in the sense that one of the things that's great about our service is the way our internal records and our internal electronic health record is designed is to track a patient's issues over time. So we aren't even designed to measure things in terms of visits. We measure things as issues that evolve and progress and that we track. And so when a patient comes through, any doctor who's looking at them actually has access to really the patient's story. So even if you are talking to one of our urgent doctors, not only do they have access to the notes that our other physicians have written for them, but they have access to the entire chat log of things that that you have discussed with our service generally. And so we try very hard to prevent this kind of re-asking you questions, not knowing basic things about you and your life and your medical history, that is so frustrating to patients. And that's another place where AI we see playing a huge role, is in helping enable the doctors to parse through all this history and stay up to date on the relevant facts given what's being discussed with the patient.
And that's one way that you said that the AI and the machine learning is really going to help the doctors, because it's right now they spend so much of their time on administrative tasks or other things like that that aren't contributing to the actual patient care.
Yep.
Sometimes, especially with healthcare, when you say things like AI and machine learning, it can sound scary, like you're dealing with a robot, but you're not. It's going to improve the patient experience. So tell us how those two go together.
Well, I would say for the average patient who goes through our service, they probably have almost no realization that they're interfacing with an AI. And that's because we don't really think of AI or machine learning as an end goal. We think of it as a tool. And so in that sense, the question is AI and machine learning to what end? And for us, it's improved access, improved efficiency, and improved efficacy of care. And so the goal from the patient end is to make this feel like this is an ongoing dialogue with your doctor. And sometimes you may get questions that are coming from an AI, and sometimes there's work going on behind the scenes where the software is doing intelligent things to assist the physician. But it's all got to feel seamless for you as a patient, as opposed to what we see with a lot of other products is, I'm going through this really clunky, crappy AI symptom checker thing, and then it gives me some weird diagnosis, and now I have to pay extra if I want to talk to a doctor. It doesn't really feel like an integrated experience. And we think by integrating the AI throughout the encounter, we can make it just feel like you are building a relationship and having a conversation with your care team, and you at the same time get the benefits of reduced cost and improved quality.
And how does it help the doctors? Because you said that with all of the learning that it does, it can compound. So it takes all of the information, not, sharing personal information, but it takes all of the information that it's learned over time through different experiences and can realize patterns and form algorithms that actually can expedite and help them come to a diagnosis.
Yeah. So probably the most obvious way it helps our physicians is in trying to gather information from patients. So our AI has learned places where and this is always done, kind of we have a team of physicians we call our clinical informatics team. Shout out to them. I know they'll be happy to get a shout out here. And they really help us understand where should we be pointing the AI. And then our engineers work to help it kind of learn, like, these are areas where I could be asking questions that are helpful for the doctor to gather in advance of the doctor stepping into the chat. And so we really think of it as, I use the analogy of, if you go see a doctor and it's 20 questions for the doctor to figure out what's going on with you, we like the AI to be doing some percentage of that. And to, over time, we call it a learning healthcare system. It learns how to gather more and more information based off of similar patients that have been through the system in the past and the questions the doctor have asked. And then it can present that note sort of as a summary, so that when the doctor steps in the room, they can hit the ground running and move much more quickly to addressing the patient's concern. And of course, they can go back and confirm some of the information or ask additional questions, but the vision is really to help the doctor kind of step into the room and work efficiently. And the AI has just done work to elicit some of that information from the patient, and then summarize all of the relevant information that it's gathered and in the patient's past for the physician.
That's really just such a whole new way to think about everything, because there are so many different virtual care options, but none that seem to be doing what Curai is doing.
Yeah, I mean, I think our ambition for this is really large, where we see, the analogy I use is, for after Deep Blue beat Gary Kasparov, IBM's AI engine beat the best chess player in the world. It was 96, it was the mid 90s. And people were freaking out about AI. And what they found for the longest time after that was that AI plus humans could beat the AI by itself. Unfortunately, this is no longer true in chess, but in medicine, we think that this combination of human intelligence and emotional intelligence paired with, the data-based intelligence of our AI can really be the next step forward and really provide more care with better outcomes at lower cost. And we're early in the journey of building that and proving that, but we've seen some encouraging signs so far. And that's where the learning aspect becomes so important. We view this as a system that has to grow and evolve over time, all towards that original mission of, how do you provide really great healthcare for 8 billion people?
What types of conditions do you see now, or do you treat on a regular basis? And then how do you see that expanding? Where are you now, and what's your evolution look like, or what are you hoping for?
So today, I mean, we see a pretty broad range of what you would consider sort of primary care things. So everything from ulcers to people suffering from ADHD to, I'm actually just like reading off a list of some of the things we've seen in the last few days, to more urgent issues like a UTI, to we see a range of patients with more chronic conditions, like, hey, I'm a hypertensive patient, or I'm a diabetic, and we also see a percentage of visits that typically in the past you wouldn't think of as medicalized, which we just consider to be like a health education or a health information and a question that folks are having. So pretty broad range of things today. I would say our biggest demographic of early adopters tend to be young women. So most women under 30, that's our biggest demographic, and the set of issues that they see. So it's everything from sexual and reproductive health, dermatology, particularly now with COVID as well, anxiety and mental health has been a big one. We see ourselves playing the role of what the primary care physician should play, which is integrative care across all of your issues. And so we see a future where, and we're building toward this, where, as a patient needs more specialized specialty care, whether it be mental health or chronic disease management, that we can plug into some of the other solutions out there that folks have built for some of those things, and then provide kind of a unified experience and a unified set of guidance for a patient across those things. Because oftentimes you find that patients who do see specialists, their specialists are very concerned with, as they should be, their one area of expertise. And when it comes to some other issue that the patient is having, it's hard for them to get guidance, and they may get contradictory advice from the two specialists they're seeing, or maybe the individual specialist isn't accounting for the complicated needs that they have given other things going on with them. And that's where, we think primary care really has a role.
And so right now you're in California. At what point do you think you will expand to different states or be nationwide?
We are talking about this really actively right now, and it's something that I expect us to address certainly in the next 6 months, hopefully faster, to try and expand to more states. So I wouldn't say necessarily nationwide in the next 6 months, but potentially. We do think, given what we've seen in California and the feedback we've gotten from users, that it's time to start expanding more aggressively, and bringing the benefits of what we've built to more people, a lot of whom don't have great access, and particularly in the pandemic, and with so many people losing their jobs, there's sort of a moral imperative to try and get more healthcare access to more people as soon as possible.
You're a young guy, obviously, but you were tackling a huge worldwide problem. What led you down this path? What did you think you were going to do? When you were 13, did you think this is what you were going to be doing?
It's funny. I think there was really a confluence of factors in my life that led to this. And in retrospect, it's sort of obvious. So when I was a young kid, I was a nerd, and I love science, and I love math. And in particular, I also had a passion for sports. And so when I was about 9, I read the Michael Lewis book, Moneyball. And to me, that was like the equivalent of like reading Superman, which was like, here's this person who is using mathematics and data and number to gain a superpower at a field that at the time I cared about. When I was 9, baseball, was the biggest thing in the world to me. And it's kind of sparked a lifelong passion for figuring out how to use data and numbers as a superpower. And that's actually what led to my interest in machine learning as a subject. And when I started learning about healthcare and seeing, actually a lot of my early interest in healthcare came from how do people use data and numbers in healthcare today? And when you see the state of the US healthcare system, and particularly how software technology and data is used in it, it's often pretty horrifying. I say to people all the time, if you took a doctor today and dropped them into an equivalent health system in 1960, they could mostly do their job. And so the entire computing revolution has gone by, and we've had almost no effect on how care is delivered. And where there has been effect, I think most people in healthcare would argue that it's been a negative effect. And I don't view that as a sign that technology and healthcare are incompatible. I view it as a sign that we haven't found the right ways to mix the two, and that there's so much opportunity in mixing those two. And that's really what we've been building towards. I think that's kind of one part of it, which is sort of my intellectual fascination with this approach. And then the second part of it is it's just a personal connection to the problem, where I've had probably more interaction with the system than I should. So both my girlfriend and my sister have chronic illnesses. And so I've seen that pretty closely, and I've seen how this system can treat chronic patients. And my mom also is a cardiac patient, and a couple of years ago spent quite some time in the hospital and I was working remotely in the hospital for almost a month, I would say. And, when you see the system up close, you see the good and you see the bad. And I think it just builds a real connection to why do we need to change this problem.
I can't imagine what it's going to be like 5 years from now to see what you and Curai have done, because it's...
Oh, I'm excited too.
It really does. I think the fact that you have this personal passion for it is going to make things even better, because that is really what helps you build. You have to be tied to it personally and be able to live in it. You're not just looking at this from an outsider's perspective saying, hey, this is a business opportunity. It certainly is, but you're looking at it and saying, I can really transform the state of really healthcare overall, which is incredible.
I think that personal connection to it is really important. I think there's some part of me that feels a little bit of an ethical obligation as well to say, you know, given what I've seen, and I come from a more privileged background, and I say, this system hasn't been great to people around me, and I just can't imagine what it's like to for many people who don't have the resources or the connections or the understanding of how the system works. You know, I remember being in the hospital about 2 years ago. No, probably about 3 years ago now. I had someone close to me was going through a surgery, and I was sitting in the waiting room, and there was a lady sitting next to us who didn't speak English, and her partner was going through a surgery, and the doctors kept coming out and trying to explain to her what was going on. There were some complications, and I'll never forget the look on her face and just the confusion, and they were trying to communicate and explain what was going on, and she was just in a state of pure fear and concern. And you just feel for people who are kind of dragged through this system in ways that isn't fair to them. And you know, that doesn't even begin to address the thousands or even millions of people who don't have access to the system, and when they get to the system, it's under the worst of circumstances. And so there's a real problem here, and we feel it every day, and it's only been amplified by the pandemic. And you know, somebody's got to solve it, and our perspective is sort of, why not us? And it's a good way to spend. It's something that's worth working on, no matter what.
So with that, what's it like being inside of your company? What are the people that you've hired to go on this mission with you like?
A lot of people who are at the company are very mission oriented. I would say we have one of the interesting things about being a tech company but also being a healthcare company is that we have a really diverse set of backgrounds. So we have physicians, we have engineers, we have designers, we have, you know, people who work on our operations team. We have people who are more focused on the business and commercialization aspects. One of the things I really appreciate is having people from all walks of life, because you learn tons of things from people who have different perspectives than you do. I think we have a very curious group and a very audacious group. So one of our values is audacity, where people do really want to make a big impact in the world. And, you know, as I mentioned, you know, one of our other values is incremental excellence. So it's, how do you get there step by step? You know, working towards that audacious, excellent, you know, vision of the future that we have. And that's something that we're working on. But we're also, you know, a group that's trying to be humble, where we haven't been grandiose in our statements publicly about what we're doing. We're not trying to overstate things. We're trying to come at this with an attitude that says, this is the version of the world that we think needs to exist. Now let's work with people to try and figure out the right path.
It's really neat that you as a person and you and your company are both focused on going on and accomplishing a mission, but also doing it through learning. Curai, to me, truly is a company that's so innovation and mission focused and learning focused, but through both the AI and through the human aspect.
That's absolutely right. One of our values is a scientific mindset. And we think that this notion of having a scientific mindset is in line with continuous learning. If you have an audacious goal, the only way you're going to get there is through learning, and the only way you're going to get there is through having enough perspectives to bring new ways of looking at the problem. I think learning comes a lot from the types of people that you attract and their attitude towards the world. So do you have people who think they know the way that things need to be and need to work? Or do you have people who say, this is how the world needs to work out in the future, and this is what our vision for the future is, and how do we work together to figure out how we get there, how we build the path there?
That's really inspiring. Obviously, you have that and you bring that out in other people, which is truly incredible. Where do you get the drive to do that? What makes you say, like, did you wake up one day and say, I can do this, I can change this world, and I'm going?
This is a really good question. I think ultimately it comes from my parents. Both my mom and my dad are huge inspirations. My mom's a great example where she started a nonprofit that works in ed tech, and they serve tens of millions of students around the world. She started this nonprofit after raising children for almost 20 years. So she was a molecular biologist in her 20s, started raising children for 20 years, and then in her 50s, after deciding to go back to school and get a master's in education, started this nonprofit. And what I love about that story is that nobody has limits, and people should always be asking, can I redefine the way I think about myself, that the world thinks about me? As a kid, my mom was really involved in our education, really involved in our school. And she realized, hey, I want to make this difference for more people. And my dad as well is boundless ambition, and in particular to try and positively change the world. And so I think there's just a lot to be learned from having those examples in your life. I will also say, though, one of the things people don't realize is when you work on things that you care about, you don't struggle to get up in the morning. Entrepreneurship in general is a journey that's sort of like self-reinforcing, because you learn so much. And to your point of learning, I think the other reason learning has continually become a strong value for the company is that when we started this company a little over 3 years ago, I didn't know anything. I didn't know anything about anything. I mean, it's hard to explain how little I knew. And so when you realize the gap between where you were and where you are today, you realize there's the same exact gap exists between where I am today and where I could be in the future. And so as long as you continue to take that mentality, you get excited about the ability to improve yourself and to learn and to improve the world. So, it's like a confluence of factors, but having parents who encourage you to constantly grow and push yourself, and then starting to see the benefits of pushing yourself. There's no safety net, and when you mess up, you mess up. I mean, you learn the hard way.
What do you want the legacy for Curai to be?
I hope, that going on into the future, we can think of the company as one of the turning points for how people access healthcare. And instead of having it being this service that is really reserved for the elite few, it's something that's distributed more widely and available, and is something that everybody deserves and can have access to in a really high quality way. And so I'm hopeful that we're a big part of pushing that forward.
What are some of the things that you're looking forward to that you could, you're 10 years in the future and you can look back at this journey and say, wow, we accomplished this, this, and this? What are those things that are really mile markers for you of personal success or company success?
I think scale of patients is a big one. At some point I'd love to see like 1 million patients a day. I don't know exactly how close we are to that. I know we can get there, but if we were seeing 1 million patients a day and helping them, that would be huge for me. I think we have ambitions to go beyond that. But that would say, to see 1 million patients a day, that's 365 million in a year. That's, call it 5% of the world's population on a given day. That would be humongous for a healthcare product. And, we have a long ways to go to get there, but that's a number in my head where I'm like, that would say we've really built a version of our mission.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for being here, Neal. I love talking to you and hearing about Curai and your personal story. I really appreciate your time.
Great. Thanks so much, Stephanie.
Thank you guys for watching. Bye.
Bye.